Hello, and thank you for listening to the Plasma for Life podcast series brought to you by RFN Studios. For more information, visit www.plasmaforlife.org and follow us on social media. Account links can be found on our website. I've heard many times that due to safety protocols, therapies made with plasma from paid donors are just as safe as plasma therapies made from unpaid donations. But I wanted to dig deeper. I contacted Shelby Rendall, a quality systems manager for Canadian Plasma Resources, to learn about their operations. What sort of safety protocols do you guys have for screening donors?
Well, first off, one of the first things that we look at when donors come into the building as a new donor is where they're located. So we have a strict 100-kilometer radius around the center that we have to have people living within to accept them. One of the other big things is that we check every single donor's address against a list of all unacceptable addresses that include anything from halfway houses, hotels, anything of that sort. So that's the very first thing that we're checking off when they come in the door. And besides that, we're also just making sure that they've brought in the proper documentation. One other thing that we're checking donors as soon as they come in the door is we check them against the National Donor Deferral Registry. That registry has any donor that may have tested positive for any of the viral markers. We check their SIN numbers against that registry to ensure that they have not tested positive for anything prior to donating with us every single time they come in to donate. And for our first and second time donors, they are longer questionnaires, a few more questions, a little bit more in-depth, and they also will talk to our nurses about questions like that as well.
Exactly what forms of ID do you check before you allow someone to donate plasma at your center?
We are checking that there is a valid government photo ID, so whether that is your driver's license, your provincial ID card, or your passport. We're looking at all of those. We also need to see proof of your address. So that can be hit with the driver's license most times, but folks can bring in something that's government issued, such as a T4 tax return, anything like that, that's also got your address on it. And upon the first visit, we need to see proof of your SIN card. So whether it's the actual card itself, or if it's a, like I said, T4 tax return, anything like that, just to check that against the National Donor Deferral Registry.
This screening process definitely seems to be a conscious effort to address the fear of donor exploitation. However, in the media and in arguments made by those opposed to paid plasma, Canadian Plasma Resources and other commercial plasma collection companies are given the image of being a blood broker boogeyman whose only concern is making a profit. I find this characterization to be very unfair. Even if that's what you want to believe, it makes no sense for them to waste time and resources on collecting and testing plasma from high-risk donors. They cannot turn a profit on unsuitable plasma.
They need to have a permanent address because folks that may be living out of a hotel, motel, a halfway house, homeless shelter, it's just a bigger risk group for us, and we will not take the risk of having someone that may be a risk group come to donate with us. So permanent address is a must. The other large one for us is some of the questions in our questionnaire. All the questions that we have in our questionnaire are looking to see if you are eligible. So there's many different factors that we're looking at with our questionnaire, such as questions asking about any past drug use or any unsafe sexual partners, anything like that. All we want is a healthy individual with a good background that we have deemed eligible by our questionnaire and our screening process, and just folks that want to come out and just make a difference.
For donor screening, how much is kind of the bare minimum by government standards, and how much is Canadian Plasma Resources going above and beyond?
So we're definitely going above and beyond what we have for the Canadian Plasmapheresis regulations. So we are governed by a few extra governing bodies. We have Health Canada, obviously. We also follow the International Quality Plasma Program and the German Health Authority as well. So We have a lot more standards that we are holding ourselves to maintain our different licenses and regulatory requirements. So we're definitely going above and beyond what is technically required as a minimum in Canada. All of the governing bodies that we follow here at Canadian Plasma Resources are on a base level the same. They're both looking to keep our donations safe and make sure that our facilities are up to their standards. In regards to the differences between them, there is one major difference is with the actual freezing process. There's different times that they're going to allow us to have the plasma frozen within. We also have IQPP, the International Quality Plasma Program. They are a lot more focused on the actual donor screening process, whereas someone like the German Health Authority that we have auditing us, they are more concerned with the actual facility itself and the entire center on a whole. So there's definitely different focuses with all of our different governing bodies. On the base level, it's all about the safety of the plasma products, and most of the regulations are quite similar.
Because of this, it's quite possible that paid plasma is perhaps more safe than the donations given freely to Canadian Blood Services. Bloodwatch has concerns over paid plasma because of the risk of an unknown pathogen contaminating the blood supply. But if this were to happen, it is just as likely, if not more likely, that the pathogen would not be detected by using the current minimum safety standards. If paid plasma is subject to more protocols and testing, it is more likely that a new pathogen would be caught and investigated. I understand the fear. No one wants to see the devastation of another tainted blood scandal, but we need to acknowledge that it is the safety screening and procedures imposed by Justice Creever that protect us from that, not the Voluntary Blood Donations Act. There hasn't been a viral transmission through plasma products in over 25 years, thanks to Justice Creever. And that outdates the Voluntary Blood Donations Act. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours for your first donation, correct?
That's right. Yeah, a little bit extra paperwork for the first timers, and then it's dropped down to, about an hour to an hour and a half for our qualified donors.
In today's world, time is valuable. With many households requiring dual incomes to stay afloat, differing work schedules, and other obligations, spare time or family time can be rare. If you are willing to give up a significant amount of that precious time to donate plasma, I believe you deserve to be compensated without stigma. What is done with the plasma after it's extracted from the donor? What's the process for screening it afterwards?
Straight from the machine, once the plasma leaves the donor, it's transferred to our processing department, and they go through and take the allotted samples that the nurses have requested. And from there, those units are frozen in our blast freezer. We also send the samples to our contracted lab facility where they're tested for antibody testing and nucleic acid testing. So that's against HIV, HCV, HBV, and HAV, along with parvovirus as well. So that is tested on every single donation that comes through our door. Plasma that's donated from your donation is usually on site for approximately a month and a half to 2 months. That's just on site here, let alone the actual plasma shipment to the facility, the extra testing, the actual fractionation, the packaging, manufacturing, and then getting it on the shelves is a long process.
Donating plasma today is not going to benefit patients tomorrow. It's a long process. It takes 7 to 12 months to manufacture plasma therapy products, which is why we must be proactive in collecting more plasma.
With the whole blood donation, it is whole blood. Nothing is really done to it at that point. It is taken from the donor, and it is frozen, and it is sent away for testing. On our end of it, we actually have the longer process because of the fact that we have to separate the red blood cells from the plasma, and that's the majority of the time that's spent here in the center is doing the actual donation process. We actually are not keeping any of the donor's red blood cells. All of the red blood cells are transferred back to the donor. That's in part why we can have folks come in and donate so often, side. It also really separates us from the whole blood products because of the fact that we are not keeping any of those red blood cells, only the plasma.
Could you explain what different types of medications are made from the plasma proteins other than immunoglobulin?
We have four main medications that come out of our plasma here at Canadian Plasma Resources. We have the human albumin, which is used to replace the low blood proteins for folks that are experiencing something like acute liver failure. We also have Intrasect, which is used for primary immunodeficiencies. We also have the hemoctin, which is a coagulation factor. So that would be used for folks that are suffering from something like hemophilia. The other main one that we have is pentaglobin. So that is used to treat folks that are experiencing shock due to severe burns, crushing hemorrhages, that sort of thing. So those are our four main medications that come out of our center.
You can help with so many different struggles by donating plasma, and the demand is ever increasing. I'm sure that for many people, the need for plasma is closer to home than they realize. Please pause this podcast if you have to, and make an appointment to go donate plasma or whole blood if you're able, paid or unpaid. Tell your friends and family. You can change lives and you can save lives. How safe are plasma protein therapies as compared to, say, raw plasma or compared to whole blood transfusions?
I would consider them extremely safe. That is because, as we touched on before, with how many different regulatory bodies that we have to follow here at Canadian Plasma Resources, along with that extra testing that we're doing at our contracted lab facility, that's happening at the fractionation companies, and the fact that it is being made into medications, it is a pharmaceutical company and it needs to be extremely safe.
Again, I want to highlight that there are clear differences between the risk level of plasma protein therapy products, plasma for transfusion, and whole blood. We should not paint them with the same brush. Health Canada recognizes this and permits paying plasma donors on a federal level while still being committed to maintaining a purely voluntary, non-remunerated collection model for whole blood. Is there any particular blood type that is ideal for plasma donation?
So actually with plasma donation, we don't take any heed to blood type, because that is attached to the red blood cells. And so with the plasma products, it's really not relevant for us, just because we are keeping the plasma and returning the red blood cells. The main thing we're looking at is the level of protein in the plasma, and that's our main goal is the plasma proteins.
Any misconceptions about plasma donation or the use of plasma protein therapies that you'd like to speak on?
Most folks are thinking that it is unsafe, that we are going to allow just anybody to come in and donate, and that's just not the case. We have very strict application processes that we need people to pass before they can donate, and it is really, 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 really safe. Majority of our donors are actually either a part of the healthcare business or they've had somebody in their family that has required immunotherapies derived from plasma protein products, that they are aware of what's going on and how badly it's actually needed in Canada. The main obstacles that the plasma business is faced with is just education. I think a lot more people need to be educated on what exactly plasma is and what actual therapies are coming out of plasma donations and how badly we do need it in Canada. Unfortunately, we are very dependent on paid donors from the US, and if more people could be educated on plasma and how great it really is, then I think that we can definitely get our Canadian donors to help be self-sufficient in Canada.
I'd like to thank Shelby for breaking that paid plasma donor stereotype. These donors are not all cash-strapped drug addicts. They are in many cases compassionate human beings whose lives have been touched by witnessing how plasma therapies help patients every day. Maybe you aren't eligible to donate plasma. That's okay. If you want to make a difference when you go to work every day, perhaps you could work in a plasma collection center. I asked Shelby about her personal education and career path.
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in microbiology and immunology. I actually applied to Canadian Plasma Resources directly out of university. It was actually only a few days after I'd graduated. I ended up starting as reception staff, and I quickly worked my way up to Quality Systems Associate, and then 9 months later I was at the Quality Systems Manager position. And I've been here for just over 3 years now with the company.
Another concern about paid plasma centers is crowding out. And what often is missed in the conversation is that Health Canada has the right and responsibility to withdraw licenses from any plasma collection centers that pose a risk to Canada's blood supply. What does Canadian Plasma Resources do to help protect the voluntary donation base?
What we do is we're not saying anything against them at all. We do need the blood products as well. We do realize that. We just do our own thing here. We take our own donors and we just allow either CBS or the other voluntary programs to continue as they are and help them out if they need anything.
How much do donors receive for paying for plasma, and does everyone accept payment, or do they have an option to donate to a charity?
So our base compensation for our donors is $30 per visit. If anybody wants to be donating their compensation to a charity, they can let us know their charity of choice and it can be sent directly to the charities.
Based on this protocol, there is nothing stopping donors from giving some or all of their compensation to Canadian Blood Services. Because Canadian Blood Services refuses to enter the contract that Canadian Plasma Resources has offered to accept the plasma products that they collect, where is the majority of the plasma products ending up? Like, who are they benefiting?
The plasma from our centers usually goes to Europe for fractionation, mostly because of the fact, like you mentioned, that CBS is not willing to accept our plasma shipments that we have, and then globally distributed once the products are completed. Globally distributed back into Canada, all across Europe. It's definitely nearly worldwide.
This brings up another unfair criticism of Canadian Plasma Resources. We cannot point a finger that they are profit-seeking blood brokers who sell Canadian plasma to the highest bidder when the only reason the plasma they collect is used outside of Canada is because Canadian Blood Services refuses to take it. And even if CPR were to sell to the highest bidder, guess what? With a public healthcare system and being a first world country, we are among the highest bidders. And it is an insult to countries who cannot afford the plasma products they need to pretend that we're not.
I wish I could understand why they were doing that. It does seem tough that they are taking these paid plasma donations from the US. So they're having paid plasma in the US brought into CBS, but they won't accept the Canadian donors. And I feel like that's a little bit sad, honestly.
Being on the front lines of the plasma collection industry, I asked Shelby her feelings on paying plasma donors.
What we like to say is that we are compensating donors for their time. The fact that it takes so much longer for donors to donate plasma, it's really just to compensate for their time that they're spending coming to us. And I highly, highly disagree with that. It is thought that offering compensation will diminish the safety or entice unwanted folks to donate. It's completely absurd. It's just a nice bonus for folks to come in and spend their time with us for a few hours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shelby, for taking time out of your day to answer our questions about the plasma donation process with Canadian Plasma Resources.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed listening to this Plasma for Life podcast. And remember to donate blood or plasma if you're able, wherever you are, paid or unpaid. Please tune in to our next episode, and for any comments, questions, or support, feel free to contact me directly at kate@plasmaforlife.org.